Are you allowing fear to control your life?
On today's episode, we will share some tips with you on how to overcome fear. Stay tuned.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Awaken Your Spirit. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia. And our show is about inspiration, motivation, and developing the mindset to live a happy and abundant life.
We're live every Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you guys would like to join us live here on the show, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, you can subscribe to the show by going to the link down here is the bit.ly/AV subscribe, and you'll get a reminder each time in your messenger when we go live. Today, we have an exciting show for you guys here today and things that people have been asking us about. And we're going to share some of those tips with you because fear is a really big common thing that all of us, I think, can relate to, and we can always use some tools and ways to overcome those. But before we get into that today, we always like to start off with our first segment of the show, which is our inspirational moment with Veronica.
So inspirational moments is when I like to read something inspirational. And today I'm going to read to you a writing from my journal. It says, "Thank you for connecting with us. As you observe the world around you, notice what once was hidden is being brought out to the light. What this means is that the truth will always shine. The truth is what matters in every situation. Allow the light within you to shine so bright that it empowers others around you to shine bright. With people starting to feel more, you automatically know when truth is being told. Step into your greatness and feel the power within you that is there to help many people. All of you have greatness within you, and all of you are meant to shine. Know that you are all connected and come from the same source, the same power."
Ooh, if you guys really enjoy that, make sure you give us some hearts, give us some likes. Always remember you can subscribe to the show here, especially if you're watching on YouTube. But I always like the inspirational moments because it's a message that helps with everybody. Mm-hmm. And we should all allow our lights to shine as well because we are creative beings. There's that part of us that wants to create, that wants to love and be happy. That's really the litmus test of everything and what we're doing in our life is what's your level of happiness.
Yeah, why wouldn't we want to be happy? Let's strive for that and spread that happiness.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed the inspirational moment today, and if you find that the message that we share with you is very beneficial for you or can be beneficial for anybody else, please share this show, tag somebody here into the feed because we never know who this message is going to impact. All right, so today on the show, we're going to be talking about how to overcome fear.
Yeah, we all have fear.
That is a very scary topic. And it's interesting because these are things that Veronica and I have been working with and practicing over within the last decade or more. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because it's something that never really ever goes away because fear is a natural emotion that we all experience, but it's when it takes over. It's when it gets out of hand and it can really stop us in our tracks and prevent us from moving forward in our life.
Yeah. And a lot of the fear, it stems from childhood, from, things that were told to us, how we grew up, our environment, things like that. And I know for me growing up, I lived in a lot of fear because I was afraid of my dad. I was afraid when he'd come home from work, did I do anything wrong? What did I do today? Oh my gosh. And and I would think like when he would drive up, it was like, did I do anything bad today? Like, am I going to get punished? Am I going to get hit today? And I would live that way. And it wasn't pleasant. So, normally like parents come home, instead of feeling that excitement, part of me was excited, but the other part of me was like fearful of being punished.
Yeah. And that's, one way of experiencing fear. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about fear and to overcome it, it's important to understand what it is, because the more understanding that we have with anything, the better it is that we can work through a lot of different things in our life. So with fear, it's like, what is fear? So at least from everything that I've studied over the last few years, fear is a natural phenomenon that we all go through. It's there as a natural emotion to protect us. It's a survival mechanism that's ingrained as our natural instincts. And it's there to protect us from any potential threats. That way, if there's danger in the way, it allows me to feel something within my body that lets me know should I run away from this? Should I come up with a solution to prevent or to get away from any of those threats or dangers? So that way I can protect myself or also the loved ones around me.
Well, for me, I couldn't run away when I was younger because I was, I was little, and where am I going to go if I can't run away from my parents? So at such a young age, it was just dealing with it. And I had to learn to adapt to that. And just in my mind, I would think like if I was being punished or, getting hit, it was like, when is this going to be over? But I would try to live my life without doing things to make my dad upset or things like that. But it's still living in that uncomfortable fear. It's almost like not allowing myself to be who I truly am. And, I've learned a lot throughout the years, and being able to express myself has been, one of the greatest things, because growing up without feeling like I had no voice was, it wasn't good. And I didn't feel like I was being expressive. I felt like I was just withdrawing, from being myself. And it was something that I learned to adapt, and kind of, I became quiet and introverted, where I know that I had that expressive side to me, but I was afraid to show it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to that type of experience. If that's something you can relate to, or things that may have caused fear a lot for you when you were growing up, let us, if you're comfortable, let us know what that is in the feed. And if there's ways that you helped overcome that, we'd like to have you share your knowledge and experience with us, because everybody has different strategies that they use to help them get through these different situations.
Or if there's a fear that you have now, like right now, there's so much fear going on in the world. And, some of us are fearful, some of us aren't. And some of us, they know that there's something great that's going to come about, this whole virus thing that's going around. And, it's how do we overcome that?
Yeah. And so we're going to get into that more. I want to say hello to a few people that are joining with us this morning. We have Stephen Smith that says, good afternoon,
Steven.
Veronica and Aaron. I really enjoy Awaken Your Spirit. I'm watching the live broadcast from Sarasota, Florida.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Tiffany Cook's joining with us. She says, good morning.
Hey,
Thank you for being here. Stephen also says, sometimes telling the truth can hurt the feelings of others when you keep it to yourself. And is that lying? So let me go back to the question, because there's a few things there. So when you keep it to yourself, and is that lying? So I just want to make sure that, because of the wording of that.
I guess, it depends. Is it, if what you're about to say, is it something more on the negative side that can potentially bring someone down versus uplifting them? And maybe there's a way that you can say it to where it's more like constructive criticism versus like blaming someone for doing something, or pointing out their faults in a negative way, because there is certain ways to say something like, oh, it's just my observation, like this is going on. And, I'm just curious, like this is happening. And I'm just curious as to why, this is happening, or something. Use more like your curiosity to ask the question versus pointing fingers or blame, because no one likes to be blamed for anything. And there's just ways to say it, and maybe word it in a way where it doesn't hurt their feelings.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm trying to understand maybe that concept of lying, but I can see that when we're talking about overcoming fears, put this down, is sometimes it's like everything starts in a thought first. So if Stephen's talking about fear, is maybe there's a bit of a fear of wanting to tell somebody something. Maybe even it is the truth, or wanting to share something. And sometimes we can fear what the outcome of that will be. What are they going to say? What are they going to think? Am I going to hurt their feelings? And really that becomes an internal process now. And when we start to feel that sensation of fear, well, really the fear is the thought. It's the fear of what's going to happen. What's the consequence? And then what we feel in our body, and we understand that the body is the instrument of the mind, and it's also the emotional filter. So what we feel in our body is that sensation of anxiety. Anxiety is the feeling. So we might feel our heart race, we start to sweat a little bit, or that we feel a little nervous tension going on, muscle tension in our body. And so we start to notice that there's an internal process that's already happening before the event is even taking place. And what happens a lot of times is when we start to experience those thoughts of maybe there's a fear of that person being really hurt. And for you in particular, and we're talking to Stephen right now, and anybody that's watching, is what that means to you and why that scares you so much. And you want to ask yourself those questions because there's always a meaning to why we feel the way we do. And if we can identify that, it will help us in the process, and it gives a wiggle room to work through that. And so maybe again, one of the common fears that most people have is that fear of criticism, of what other people are going to think, that judgment. And so it's a basic fear that even Napoleon Hill talks about as one of the 6. And so one of the things you can do is identify why would this scare me? What's going to happen if I say this? And we're going to talk more about this and how to do this. I won't give every little tip away just yet, but I'll come back to this. But it's not necessarily lying, but I like how you said it, Veronica, is understanding when you're not in that emotional state, figure out what's the best way for me to say this. And sometimes people have to break bad news. I can only imagine what doctors have to go through when they have to share the news that, hey, your loved one just passed away. I mean, and I know that's not an easy thing to do.
And something like that, it's like you can't hide that, even though it's not going to feel good to the other person, but it's information that they need to know. But it's also saying something in a more loving way, if that makes sense to you.
Okay, here's what he's talking about. So he says, I'm not referring to attacking one's character as much as telling someone something that they may not want or need to know about.
Okay. So it's not saying that they're behaving in a certain way because they probably know how they behave. So it's so telling someone something that they may not want or need to know about. Well, then you could probably approach it in a way like I want to share something with you about this, or if it's something that's going on with you, maybe you can ask if they want to know. And
those are scenarios. I mean, it could be we don't know what the actual situation is, but it could be, hey, you need to know something about what this person is doing. Maybe there's like a business transaction that someone's going through. I'm just doing an example out here, and you might need to be weary of this person, or you might be concerned about what's going to happen if this goes on. So I can see maybe that's where he's going with this. There's different scenarios here. And he says, I've told the truth about myself, and it caused issues for me. In retrospect, it was a learning experience for me not to make the same choice again.
But it's also understanding like how the other person or people reacted in regards to you telling the truth. And sometimes maybe if they ask you like, hey, like I want to know about this, then maybe it's okay to share, what your experiences were, or if it's about your past, you can share that, but your past is your past, and that doesn't define who you are today. Because, everyone has a past. And if someone is going to judge you based on your past, but you're a complete different person today, then that's something that they're holding on to. That's their own issues that they have to process and deal with, because maybe they had an experience with something like that in their own life where it affected them traumatically, and now they're reacting in that way towards you. So I'm not sure if that makes sense to you, but if someone does ask, then I would say yes, tell the truth. But but also explain like who you are today. It has nothing to do with who you were in the past. That's the past, and that's why you chose to let the past go. But they also have their own internal process that they have to deal with when it comes to hearing the truth.
Yeah, and so this brought up a great point, which is good to talk about now. Is like what would create the fear? And a lot of the times it's from an experience that we've had. Think about when we're born into this world. It's like everything's brand new. We have no experience of anything, and we're out there and we're exploring. You see the kids always want to grab and touch anything. There's nothing in their mind that tells them what's good or what's bad. They ended up figuring out that for themselves. Either, oh wow, I'm going to touch this and something's hot. They don't know what hot is, and they touch it and they feel something that creates some discomfort. And now that registers into the brain that says, I remember something like that. I'm not going to touch that because I remember how painful that was.
Yeah.
And so now that creates an avoidance reaction. And things that people tell us can create the same thing, different experiences that we all go through. And so Stephen mentioned that perfectly was, I had an experience before that wasn't so good.
Yeah. And Stephen, I can relate to you because also when I was younger, sometimes I would, people would ask me questions in the family and I told the truth. And then later I got in trouble for that. And I didn't understand, like, well, that's what it is. And then sometimes my parents would say, well, if they ever ask you this, you tell them this. And it was almost like telling a lie. So they were telling me to lie. So I was very confused, like, well, that's not the truth, but that's what my parents want me to say. So I just learned to not say anything. And that was the way I learned to adapt is I just didn't say anything and became quiet and shy and maybe tried to avoid people because of that. So it's like, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm just not going to say anything. And, now I'm not that way, but back then that was something that I learned as a coping mechanism to not get in trouble.
Yeah. And it really comes down to how we feel. So when we have these experiences in our life, now at a subconscious level, it remembers.
Yeah.
You may not point two and two together, but a situation will come up into your life and it will resemble in some way, shape, or form that past experience. And that now becomes a trigger.
Yeah.
And when we get triggered, we start to feel at a biochemical level. Heart rate starts racing, hormones go out. I mean, it's registering so fast before you even experience what's going on. And what's going to happen is it's going to create all kinds of issues in the body.
Yeah.
And what happens is sometimes it gets so out of hand, it goes into a full-blown, what we like to term an emotional hijacking. And if you've been following with us on our show here, we talk about when you're in a highly emotional state, all rational thinking goes out the door. Because it's like either going to be thinking and calm, or you're going to be in some type of a fight or flight mode. And you can't be in two places at the same time. And so when you're in those emotional states, that's when a lot of people may say things that maybe shouldn't have been said in that moment, or they react in a different way that normally they wouldn't do in a very calm state. And so we have to be mindful of when we start to feel these emotions is before we act on anything, we want to calm those down first.
Yeah.
And even if it's like a leading up to, because usually fear is like something I feel something that might be leading up to, or I'm fearing of this event happening. I'm a fear of going on stage and talking to people. I'm a fear of saying this. And like it's almost like what starts to you creating yourself before the event actually happens. And a lot of times it's because we're remembering what it was like in the past, and it's associating your subconscious mind, and it's bringing up all those feelings, and it's making you believe that same thing is going to happen again.
Yeah. And, sometimes sharing your past with some people will be like, wow, like I'm so happy that you're open, and I'm happy that you're being truthful and you're expressing yourself, and you're not allowing your past to stop you from sharing this information. So, and some people will take it, in a good way, like, wow, he's being open and honest about it, where other people will look at your past and judge you for it. But that doesn't really matter, because people are going to judge you regardless. And even if you try to do everything right, and, in your way that you feel others would look at you, there's always going to be someone that's going to judge you. And it doesn't matter. Like they can judge the Pope or, all these, saints and things like that based on something that they did in their past. And that doesn't really matter, as long as you speak you're in your own truth now and sharing your experience and what you learn from it, because that's all it is. It's a learning experience. And at that time, maybe that's all that you knew. So if they want to judge, maybe there's something within themselves that they're not happy with. So that, just to, throw that out there, because I used to be the same way in in the past as well, where I shared some information about my past, and it's almost like they used it against me. But then the types of people that do that, and the ones who are gonna relate and maybe tell you, like, I'm happy you shared that because it's made a difference in my life, and I used to think the same way. And there's always going to be the pros and cons to it.
Yeah, and that's where you want to be in a very calm, rational state to be able to think things through. It'll let you know, should I say something or should I not? And we're talking about if we're going to say something to other people that might potentially bring some type of either like a conflict, or again, it's what we're creating in our own mind. And so as we go through these processes, and before I move on, I just want to see Tiffany's comment here. She says, I overcome fear by working on my blockages and by having you guys help me with the big ones. Piece by piece, I remove the fear at the root of the issue. And there is always a root.
Yeah.
And if you can learn to pull the root out and get rid of it, then we don't react the way we normally would when those situations show up. And that allows us to come up with better strategies. Maybe the strategy that we used in the past wasn't the best one, or that's all we knew at the time, like you talked about. And it's like, okay, well, if that didn't work out so well, what would be a better way for me to approach this situation? And think of solutions. And even if none of them are pleasant, find the one that's the least, that is more pleasing than the others, and go that route. But you're going to want to think these through. And if you need help, ask for help and guidance from people that can go through that process with you. So one of the things that we really identify, and we've been talking about this, is that one of the first steps is to overcoming fear is we have to be aware of it. And we have to be aware of what triggers our fear. And that's why we talked about those past experiences. When you start to notice that, I feel a little bit of fear. And fear also shows up as worry. Fear and worry are a similar process. We have that, the fear is the thought and the worry is how we start to feel. And then it starts to turn into that anxiety type of feeling. But what triggers that? It could be a fear of, maybe we're talking about having to share news with somebody or a group of people. Maybe some people have a fear of doing what we're doing now, is being live and sharing videos and sharing our thoughts and our words to you. And what are people going to think about that? Yeah,
that fear of judgment is huge for a lot of people. And that's why most people don't like public speaking. They don't like getting up in front of a crowd of people and sharing or expressing, or even crying. Like, crying in front of people is very difficult for some, and they just stuff it. And it's if that emotion wants to come out, it's like, allow yourself to feel that, and that's being real. Like when you're able to just cry and just allow it, allow yourself to express. Because when you suppress it, that's when these emotions get stuck, and you're just bottling it up, and it's eventually going to come out.
Yeah, and when people bottle it up, it can express itself in so many different ways in your physical body. It can deplete your immune system. You can actually experience physical pain because of this, especially if you're, again, words you're wanting to get out, but you're holding on to them, and your body's like that pressure cooker that's building up. So you start to feel, you notice, hey, something is triggering me, and it's triggering this emotion of fear within me. And these are the proper moments to just be aware. But I am scared right now. I'm feeling worried, or I'm feeling anxiety. At least recognize it.
Yeah,
and that's
that
okay.
Awareness. Yeah, because and then, like you said, ask yourself, why do I feel this way? And eventually it'll probably take you back to an experience you had.
Yeah, so it's like awareness is always a key for so many different things. If we're not aware, then how do we know we can change it, or that we should change it? And so becoming fear and understanding that fear is really, again, it's there to protect us. But, that was a natural phenomenon that was endowed to us coming into this world to protect us from potential dangers and threats. But those threats are different today than they were hundreds of years ago. And so now it's like, again, that criticism, it's the fear of, am I going to get sick? Am I going to lose someone that I really care about? Those 6 ghosts of fear that Napoleon Hill talks about. So when we become aware of our fear, then we can start to identify, okay, what's causing this fear in me? Why am I so scared? Why does this worry me so much? Because we know a lot of people that their natural tendency is to worry all the time.
Yeah, and that's not a good state to be in all the time, because it's really changing the chemistry of your body, and it creates more acidity when you're in that energy, and then that's when you start to see health issues and things like that. So it's learning to be more calm. And how do we do that? The next thing is to learn a relaxation method. Learn to relax, practice meditation, practice going within and really feeling that calmness in your mind, because it starts in the mind. When we're worried about something, we're rehearsing something over and over, and a lot of times it never even happens. It's just something that you're afraid that will happen, and you're thinking of all these scenarios, and sometimes it doesn't even happen, and it's all that wasted energy for nothing.
Yeah, and it is a lot of wasted energy. That's why we talk about it can deplete your immune system. It can make you sick because
you get tired.
You're draining mental energy, worrying about certain situations or fearing certain situations that could potentially happen, and these things do show up. And so when this happens, is we mentioned a relaxation method, because there's so many different techniques of how to relax, and the key concept of this is just to calm down that emotional mind. To be able to get you back into rational thinking, to be able to come up with solutions. And when we're more relaxed, it's like answers come to us. That doesn't affect us as much. And you ever notice, like, earlier we were talking about needing to say something or have a certain conversation with somebody that we don't know how that conversation is going to go. And the conversation happens. And let's even say that, it still wasn't a pleasant conversation. Maybe it wasn't as bad as we put into our mind, but we had the conversation, we got that off of our chest. And now from that point, we can deal with the aftermath. There's no more worrying or fearing about that situation, because it already took place. And it's like, okay, what do we do from here? And the next step would be, maybe there's some forgiveness. Maybe there's some, because there's going to be some emotion that comes up between both parties. And when we can work through that, and there's so many different scenarios, so I can't, so we just apologize. It depends on what that is. But we come up with better solutions, but we get that off of our chest. But it's that leading up.
Yeah, and you can say, there's something I want to tell you. I don't need a response from you. I just want to share this with you because I feel like I need to share this with you. And you don't have to ask them, to respond to it. Just for you to tell them if that's going to help you to express what's going on. Maybe it's something that was bottled up and you just felt like you needed to say it. Let them know. Say, I don't, I'm not looking for a response. I just feel like I want to share this with you.
Yeah. And so if you guys are just tuning in with us, you guys are watching Awaken Your Spirit. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia. And today we're talking about how do we overcome fear?
Overcoming fear.
Yeah.
It's a big one for all of us. And when we can learn to take control of our fear rather than allowing fear to control us, then we are in the driver's seat. We can start to create whatever it is that we want in our life. Because a lot of times fear stops us from creating the things that we want to do, to go in the direction in our life that we really want to go in, because there's a potential consequence that we believe might happen. And it's interesting because 99% of the time, it may not even happen at all.
Yeah.
And there's a potential, but even if something does happen, is it at the intensity that we believe it to be? So that brings us now to our third concept, is once we become aware of our triggers of fear. So we're going back to here. We have our triggers. Be aware of what's triggering us. That, oh yeah, I feel fear right now. What created that? Somebody said something. I heard something on the news, or so many different scenarios. But wow, I'm feeling something, and I've done this with Veronica quite a bit, and I feel comfortable to share. And that's a key thing, is whatever you're feeling, if you need to share something or get something off your chest, find somebody that you can feel that is comfortable for you to express. Because one of the reasons why a lot of people don't want to express their emotions is because maybe there's someone that would say something because of that.
Like
if you
judgmental.
Because find someone that will support you in that process. Don't just do it to everybody. Find someone that will support you. And that way you can ease that emotion, so we, again, get back in the conscious reasoning thought and come up with better solutions.
Yeah, and if you don't feel comfortable with the people around you to say anything, maybe journal, write down exactly what you're feeling and what happened, what made you feel that way, and write down your fears, write down your triggers, what created the fear, and put it down and write it down. And then once you get that off, your mind, then maybe there could be solutions that you think of that will help you to maybe handle it in a different way.
Yeah, and that's another relaxation technique is to get
it out,
get those feelings, get those thoughts off your mind. If you can't find anybody, you can write it down.
Also, for those people who can't meditate and they feel like anxiety with meditation because it's too quiet, maybe put on like some relaxing music, like spa music or meditation music, and then close your eyes to that and listen to that and just feel the calmness of it. Or maybe some nature sounds and just sit in that with your eyes closed and allow yourself to this time to relax. Because sometimes with, if it's just too quiet, it's like they'll start thinking about things. But put on something that's relaxing, or maybe even a guided meditation where someone is, speaking in a quiet, calm voice, and that can help you relax.
Yeah, meditation has been one of the greatest things for me, especially when I find myself in any type of an emotional state. It just helps me to get out of that emotional mind. It brings me back into peace and calmness again.
Yeah.
And then all the solutions tend to just come my way. And I realize what I was concerned about, worried, fear, whatever that might be, it starts to dissipate.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And it's very powerful. Now that does take practice. And it's like there's things that you can do almost immediately when you're feeling that, because if you're feeling that sensation, those sensations right now, you haven't practiced meditation. We got to find something we can do right now.
Yeah.
And so part of those is, again, that we need to become aware of those triggers and practice something. A lot of times we teach people just breathe. Allow yourself to feel for a moment and breathe through that moment until your body starts to calm down.
Because when you're in that state of fear and worry, it's like your body's tense and you're not breathing. It's like just, being tense all over, and then your breathing changes. But when you allow yourself to just relax the shoulders, take that deep breath, and then you feel more calm just by taking that breath.
Yeah, and the breath is so powerful. And if we all just learn to breathe, because think about it too, when we're in those worries, those fears, and it's all the same emotion, it's just the worry is kind of like the ruminating over something, the fear is what we're thinking about, and it starts to go into that sense of anxiety. Anxiety is the feeling, the sensation we get through our body. And for some people, it becomes so heightened that it can turn into a full-blown panic attack. For some people, it will turn into phobias, PTSD, post-traumatic stress, over-compulsive type of disorders. And that's like on the spectrum of like when worry and fear get too far out of hand and just really take control over someone's mind, because there's no thinking anymore.
Yeah,
it's all emotional.
And there's different levels of fear and different levels of worry. Like there's, little things that people worry about, but then there's something that people dwell upon like constantly. And that's when it's like taking over, because now it's taking over your mind. And if that's always on your mind and you're constantly dwelling on it, that's when, your body starts changing the chemistry, and, so many different things can happen because of it.
Yeah. And so once we start to become aware of what's triggering our fear, and in those moments, we want to make sure that we prevent it from getting to that full-blown anxiety attack. We want to practice that relaxation method, whatever that is for you, whether it's breathing, meditation, go for a jog, a walk, write it out on paper. We just want to calm that emotional state down as much as we can, so that we can start to come up with solutions. And that brings us now to our third tip for you guys. Is once you get to that point, is we need to really challenge our thoughts. And we don't do this in a highly emotional state, because our subconscious emotional mind will hold true to what it's feeling. And again, if you talked about someone who's very highly emotional, there's no working or getting through to them until they're calmer. Yeah,
that's why the relaxation is very important prior to the step number 3, which is challenging our thoughts.
Yeah, and then once we're calm, we can write this down. We can talk to somebody else and get different perspectives. Again, someone that you can trust that that'll help you through this process. And we look at, wow, is what I'm fearing, is what I think going to happen? Is that really going to happen? Will that happen as bad as I believe it's going to? And sometimes what proof do I have that that will happen?
Yeah.
And when we start to challenge it, it will start to change our perspective. And that is key. Changing our perspective on what what will happen around us, what we see in front of our face and our eyes, and then also in the world. That will start to change our way of thinking. It starts to change our habits, our paradigms, which is our behaviors. And we have to challenge a lot of our thoughts. Someone says something, and when you're younger, and you take it as truth.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we have to go back and reevaluate our thoughts. We have to reevaluate our belief systems. And so, does that still hold true today, or is it even true at all?
Yeah. And by challenging our thoughts, it's like we're pretty much asking ourselves the question, like you mentioned, like, is this really going to happen? Can it happen? What's the probability that it would happen? And has it ever happened before? And, a lot of times it's just like worries that, that we worry for no reason, and stuff doesn't even happen. And like I mentioned earlier, it's a waste of energy to be in that state, because now you're dwelling on it and you're repeating a scenario over and over in your mind. And then you're creating something that's unpleasant. Like, it's better to focus on what we do want, on the outcomes that we do want, something more pleasant that makes us feel good, because then when we're feeling good, we're in a better vibration. We're more in alignment with what we want. When you're not feeling good, you're out of alignment. And that's pretty much how you determine whether you're in alignment or not, when you feel good or when you don't feel good. And focus on, and we talk about this all the time, is focus on what you do want. Focus on the outcomes that you want to see. Focus on, maybe if you have to deal with someone, focus on how you would like them to treat you. Or if you're going somewhere and you're presenting to a group of people, focus on the outcome that you want to see from the people. And, it's interesting how things will happen. And, a lot of times it's better than what you expected. But that's because you're in alignment and your vibration is matched with what you want.
And what's interesting too is, fear, it can go all over the place. And someone could ask that question, well, why would I not fear? If I don't fear this, then something bad will happen. And there's those people that are chronic worriers, or at least fear. Again, fear is a normal emotion. It's not like you're never, ever going to feel fear in your life. It's when the fear takes over and it stays there for a long time, and it stops you from doing the things that you want to do. Because people could say, well, how can I not fear the situation going on? And we're talking like tragic events. It's, let's say there's someone that's going to potentially cause harm to other people. Those are moments when we're going to have that initial fear. And yes, you're going to feel that. And it's like, but what we do is like, we have to be able to get that fear under control a little bit, so we can come up with a solution of how to avoid danger. And that's what fear really is for. It's a natural emotion to help us avoid dangerous situations. I can only imagine military. They're trained on a daily basis to install habits into their minds, so that way when they're in those really high stressful situations, because they understand that in a highly emotional state, you're not thinking very well. And that can be a life or death situation for them or for their troops. And so why they drill and train over and over again is because when those moments come up and they get in those highly emotional states of panic and fear, they fall back into what they know, their habits. They'll go automatic. And so that's why these techniques, they're there to practice over and over again as repetition. So when those situations show up again in the future, you automatically just go into getting out of that fear mode and come up with solutions. But it does take practice, and you got to repeat it to change the new habits.
And then let's see, let's go to Tiffany. She says, this week I've been completely exhausted and drained of energy. And during that time, I've had a lot of crazy emotions and fears come up. And see, this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, is that it's like a waste of energy when we are in that worry and fear and dwelling on something. And I remember this, when, years ago when I was younger, dwelling on certain things and just feeling drained and tired. And it doesn't feel good. But when we change our point of focus to something that we want, something that's exciting for us, it's almost like you get this different level of energy, and it's like it brings more good feelings to your body. And it's interesting how you can go, just instantly to feeling good, and like this energy just comes out of nowhere, it seems like.
Yeah, and it takes practice. I remember when I was that type of person who always had a hard time like speaking on stages. I remember even in school when you had to give presentations, you get this anxiety and fear. Again, what are my peers going to think? It was that fear of criticism, because I used to have this concept of worrying what people thought about. And don't get me wrong, there's still that little bit of residual that's still there, but I have to be aware of that and work through it regardless. And that's what helped us to even do the show. We tell people, it's like, when we decided to do this show, I hesitated for like a year. Not sure what I was going to say. What are we going to talk about? What are people going to think? Are they going to like it? These thoughts and ideas started to play in my mind. And because I allowed them to just spiral through, it stopped me from taking any action. And until like one day when we just worked through a lot of stuff and we made a commitment, say, okay, we're going to do this. And we're going to commit and do this twice a week for every single week. And we've done that for almost 3 years now. I think going on 4, back in 2017. So 3, we're in our third year.
Yeah, this is our third.
And so, and by moving through that, I realized that it wasn't as bad as I thought in my head.
Yeah.
And that helped.
It became fun. And at the beginning, it was a little, I guess, like trying to make it too polished. And then like later, it's like, what, let's just have fun with it. And the more fun you can have with it, it's more relaxing, and you're even excited to be like, hey, we're going live. And but when you're worried about something, then it's like and you get that hesitation. But once you allow the fear to go away and the worry about what people are going to think, it's like you just have fun. And that's what life is about. It's about having fun. And this is with everything, with your job, with your goals, things that you're doing. It's find that pleasure in doing it, enjoying that journey of where you're going. And because if you're not enjoying it, then why are we doing it?
Yeah. And that comes to, it's like, even though the fear still might be there, you've done your relaxation methods, you're aware that you're scared, and you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to challenge my thought. Yeah, this probably won't happen. You're probably still going to feel a lot of this.
Yeah.
And what's really going to dissipate that is when we just do and take that action step and have faith. It's always that fear of we don't know what's going to happen. And when we take that leap forward, and I know you've had your experience of this in some way in your life, is when we move forward, we realize, wow, that was actually a great experience. It was better than I thought it was going to be. Why was I worrying so much? Why was I scared about this?
Yeah.
And again, you've got something that you want to create in your life. Maybe you want to get out of your job and then go start your own career, your own business. Something you've been wanting to do for a long time. But there's that fear that says, what about my paycheck? What's going to happen? How am I going to start this? Those hows start to kick in. And the thing we always teach people is, one is like, don't worry or think about the how. Just know what you want to do and create. And because again, in those highly emotional states, all logic goes out the door. And we realize when we just allow, we have faith to do the things that we want to do, the how will come to us. But we have to take rational steps.
Yeah.
You have to do like your pros and cons. What's the best strategy for me to take if it's someone who wants to, get out of the job they're unhappy with and go start a career, and they don't know, maybe they're worried, what about that paycheck? How am I going to pay my rent? Those things will start to come up.
Yeah.
Is maybe it's not the best time for you to just go cold turkey and quit your job and then go start something.
Yeah.
It could be the time, okay, I'm going to still do what I want to do, but I'm going to move forward in creating something that I want to create until I can replace my income and feel comfortable going full time with a new thing that I want to do. These are solutions that we come up with, but you can only do those in a really, a very calm state.
Yeah. And sometimes when, we get all worked up and worried and fearful about, what can happen. And then, once those emotions kind of dissipate and you take the action and then actually do it, then sometimes you're thinking, well, why didn't I do this sooner? Like, what was I hesitating, or why did I, worry so much when the outcome is even better than you expected? And, but that's a learning experience. And so when you see that, it's like, okay, so worrying doesn't really, it actually stops you from doing things. And, but when you can let go of that worry and the fear and move forward, you'll see a complete different experience. And then it's like, wow, like I had no reason to worry.
Yeah. Tiffany says, when in doubt, ground and ask for clear understanding of the thoughts and feelings you're having. When you do anything that is a false feeling, should ease up. And again, we have to really challenge our thought process. And it's like we can do relaxation methods, but if we don't challenge the thought, we don't change the way that we think, the way that we do things, we just repeat the pattern over and over again. And there's a lot of other things that we can do, and it takes a lot of practice, but it is the repetition of doing these things that really changes that. And you'll start to notice over time as you keep practicing that the things that we used to fear aren't as scary anymore. Or even if we start to feel that fear, we learn to not allow ourselves to be in that state for a long period of time. It's like, okay, I'm feeling something. It's natural. Okay, I have some tools that I can use to get myself out of this so I can move forward. And that is the big thing, because going into something new can be a little frightening, and but it can be exciting at the same time. But as we move forward, and then this is my experience with it, and our experience is something greater happens because of that. Are there going to be times when we have to do things that might be unpleasant? Yes, but what's even worse than that is holding in and not saying or doing anything, and that starts to bring up the regret. Oh, I should have said something, and guilt is worse than fear. And we want to make sure that if we were talking earlier about maybe there's something we have to share with somebody that I don't think this conversation is there's no pleasant or good way that this is going to go, but it has to happen. We have to make the decision and do it regardless, and figure out what can we do in the aftermath. And I remember a story. I read this, and it was a book by Dale Carnegie. It was How to Stop Worrying and How to Stop Living.
How to start living?
How to start living, not stop living. Excuse me. How to start living. Stop worrying, start living. And there was a story of a man who was diagnosed with some type of a cancer. I think it was like a stomach cancer. And the doctor said, well, you have about 6 months to live, and I recommend that you don't travel or you do anything. And the man was so worried about, that fear of dying. And what was interesting is one thing that he really wanted to do was he wanted to travel the world. And so what happened was he just accepted that he was going to die. He accepted that rather than dwelling on it. It's like, you know what? I'm going to die, but with this time that I have, I'm going to go and travel the world.
Wasn't he the one that bought his coffin and took it with him?
Yeah. So because this was a long time ago, so it was by boat. And they might have said that, hey, you're probably not going to survive this trip. And so, okay, well, if that was to happen,
here's my coffin.
Here's my coffin. Here's what you're going to do. So he made arrangements for all these things where you can travel. And it's like, just in case this happens, this is already taken care of. And the moral of that story, what happened was, because he did all this, his cancer actually started going away and he recovered. And the point of all of this was when he learned to accept what was going to happen, and he planned ahead of time of, when this happens, this is what we'll do. And so that was a tactic that they used to learn to accept what can come. That'll just get a lot of that weight off of your chest. And what will you do if this scenario happens? If the worst thing that you say happens, what will you do when that happens, and prepare for that? And when you have a plan already prepared, you've prepared for that. But a lot of times what will happen is you got the plan, you go do the thing you wanted to do, and there's no need for that plan because it didn't happen the way we thought. But the sense of getting the worry and the fear off of your mind, off of your body, is so rewarding, because now you put yourself in a different vibration of not allowing and attracting that into your life.
And then you're not holding on to like that tension and like all the yucky feelings that go on the inside. It's like you learn to relax, and when you relax, like the body feels good, your mind especially feels good. And then let's see, we have a comment. Stephen Gordon, he says, hello to both of you beautiful selves and spirits. Hey, Gordon.
Hey, Stephen
Gordon, thank you for joining us today.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah.
So let's recap a little bit. We've been talking today about how to overcome fear. And so one of the first things that we talked about was becoming aware of what triggers our fear, being aware that, hey, I am scared. I'm feeling fear right now because of a situation or a person or a thing that is there. And again, fear is just we fear like a potential threat that might happen. And so we become aware of that. And if we're trying to move forward with this, then the next thing that we want to do once we become aware is find some way that we can get ourselves to relax. That might be a breathing technique. And breath is really good, is just learning to breathe. You might want to journal and get your thoughts out onto paper. Maybe it's finding somebody that you can share your thoughts with. And not so much of a venting that's going to keep stirring up the fear. You want to find someone that can help you through this process, not feed it.
Yeah.
Because if you feed it, it's just going to make it even worse.
Yeah. And then the third one is to challenge your thoughts. And by challenging your thoughts is asking the questions like, what's the probability that this will even happen? And like, why am I thinking this way? Why am I feeling this way? And really ask yourself those questions. Yeah.
And when you think about the probability of this will happening, then if it says, well, it's a 95% chance, then you say, well, how do you know that? What's the evidence or what's the proof that's going to really show you or tell you that this really will happen in this way? Maybe it will happen in some way, shape, or form, but maybe not in the exact same way that we created in our own mind. And this is just from personal experience, that it never ever happens the way that I think it's going to happen. Maybe you've had that experience yourself. And when we challenge our thoughts and we're in a calmer state, then we have a lot of wiggle room to create better solutions and better strategies for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I hope that these tips have been helpful for you. There's a lot of other things that we can all do, but these are just something that all of us can work with.
Yeah.
Practice them daily.
Just start with these 3.
Yeah, we practice this all the time, and it has been very, very helpful, because when we learn to challenge and we understand that, wow, I'm not as fearful or scared or worried as I used to be in the past. I'm a completely different person today than I was a year, 2 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's been so rewarding. And I know that if I can do it, you can do it. And I know for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in fear, and now it's completely different. It's like, I don't have that stress that I did as a child. So it's been great.
So thank you, everybody who's been joining with us today on this episode of Awaken Your Spirit. Again, we are your hosts. I'm Dr. Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia. And we thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Remember, we are live Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you guys would like to subscribe to the show, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, get the reminders so you know when we go live. And also, if you're on Facebook or join us on Facebook, go to the bit.ly/AV subscribe. You'll get reminders each time when we go live here on the show. And we hope you guys have enjoyed, got some value out of this today. Share with anybody that you feel can benefit from this message, because as we always say, we never know who this message is going to impact. And we thank you guys for being here, and we will see you next time.
Have a great day.
Bye.